How many times have you said yes when every part of you screamed no? Maybe it's staying late at work even though you're already burned out because you don't want to disappoint your boss, or agreeing to help a friend who constantly takes more than they give, leaving you feeling drained and unappreciated. Perhaps it's attending social events you dread just to keep up appearances or please people who don't truly value your time. These situations are all too familiar, aren't they? And the worst part is that after you've said yes, you often find yourself battling frustration, exhaustion, and resentment. You start to wonder why you keep saying yes to things that don't align with your true needs and values. It's like you're constantly sacrificing your own well-being for the approval of others, leaving you feeling empty, overwhelmed, and out of balance. The truth is, learning when to say no is one of the most important skills for preserving your mental health and peace of mind. This isn't about being selfish. It's about respecting yourself enough to prioritize what truly matters to you. It's about aligning your actions with your values so that your energy goes toward things that nourish you, not drain you. Today, we'll explore how Stoic philosophy can offer you a way out of this cycle. Through the wisdom of Stoic thinkers like Marcus Aurelius and Epictetus, we'll uncover how saying no is not only a sign of strength, but also a vital step toward living a life of true self-respect and inner peace. How often have you said yes when every fiber of your being was telling you to say no? It's not just about agreeing to things, it's about the hidden fears that silently drive us to overcommit and neglect our own needs. These fears are powerful, often unconscious, and they dictate much of our behavior. Let's dive deeper into the key fears that lurk behind every yes you don't truly mean. Fear of disappointing others. One of the most common reasons we say yes when we should say no is the fear of disappointing others. We worry that saying no will make us appear selfish, inconsiderate, or uncaring. The fear of being judged negatively by others can often be paralyzing, causing us to prioritize their expectations over our own well-being. For example, imagine your boss asks you to stay late on a Friday to finish a project, and even though you're exhausted and had plans to relax, you agree because you don't want to be seen as uncooperative or lazy. Or maybe a friend who always needs help asks you for another favor, and even though you've helped them countless times without receiving much in return, you say yes again, fearful that they'll think you don't care if you refuse. The root of this fear is a deep-seated concern about how others perceive us. We believe that if we disappoint someone, we risk losing their approval or even the relationship itself. But the Stoic philosopher Epictetus reminds us that it's not the actions of others that define us, but how we respond to them. As he wisely said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When we act out of fear of judgment, we lose sight of our own values and become slaves to others' expectations. The Stoics teach us that true peace and self-respect come from aligning our actions with our own principles, not from appeasing others. Another deep-rooted fear behind our tendency to say yes is guilt, the belief that our worth is tied to our ability to give to others. This belief often stems from childhood, where we may have been conditioned to feel that our value is measured by how much we help or sacrifice for others. Over time, this can morph into a mindset that self-worth is dependent on service, leaving little room for personal desires or self-care. Take, for instance, a situation where a friend who never reciprocates asks for your help. Despite the fact that helping them will make you feel drained and resentful, you feel obligated to agree because you believe your worth is defined by your generosity. Saying no feels impossible because it feels like you're rejecting your very identity. Marcus Aurelius highlights the importance of aligning your actions with your true values, saying, if it's not right, don't do it. If it's not true, don't say it. This powerful reminder teaches us that guilt and obligation should not dictate our actions. Just because someone expects something from us doesn't mean we owe it to them. By letting go of the belief that we are only valuable if we give and give, we free ourselves from the cycle of guilt-driven decisions. When we continuously give in to these fears, whether it's the fear of disappointing others or the belief that our worth is tied to helping, we enter into a vicious cycle of people-pleasing. The initial act of agreeing to something may provide a fleeting sense of relief, but it doesn't take long before the cycle starts to repeat itself. Every time we say yes out of fear, guilt, or obligation, we chip away at our self-respect and personal energy. The more we overcommit, the less we have to give, and the more drained and resentful we feel. The very act of overcommitting becomes a trap. The more we please others, the more we feel obligated to do so, creating a loop that leads to burnout, frustration, and a sense of being unappreciated. This cycle undermines our own needs, making us feel disconnected from our true selves. It's not just about feeling tired, it's about feeling empty because we've been pouring out energy without replenishing it. And when we start feeling drained, our resentment grows, not just toward others, but toward ourselves for allowing this cycle to continue. This conflict creates a deeper issue, the dissonance between your true self and the role you've taken on to please others. The more you sacrifice for others, the further you drift away from what you truly want and need. The more you say yes when you should say no, the less you honor your true self. In the next part of this journey, we'll explore how the Stoic wisdom of detachment and self-respect can offer a solution to break free from this cycle of fear and people-pleasing. It's time to shift from reaction to intentional action, and it starts by recognizing that you are not responsible for everyone else's happiness, only your own. We've all been there, the moment when we agree to something despite knowing it's going to push us beyond our limits. Maybe it's another late night at work or another favor for someone who never seems to reciprocate. It's easy to say yes in the moment, but the emotional, physical, and social toll of these constant yeses can be devastating. The most immediate consequence of constantly saying yes is the emotional and physical burnout that follows. At first, you might feel a sense of satisfaction. I'm helping someone, I'm doing my part, but over time, that satisfaction fades, replaced by frustration and exhaustion. For instance, imagine agreeing to take on an extra project at work because you don't want to let your team down, even though your schedule is already packed. The initial rush of wanting to be a good team player quickly gives way to frustration when you find yourself unable to meet all the demands. The extra work eats into your personal time, and soon the exhaustion sets in. You snap at loved ones, dread getting up in the morning, and feel like you're constantly running on empty. On a deeper level, this constant anxiety about disappointing others can create a never-ending cycle of stress. You're always thinking ahead. Will I be able to get this done? What will they think of me if I don't help? And the weight of this anxiety takes a psychological toll. It can feel like you're caught in a spiral of never-ending obligations, where your own needs and desires get pushed further and further down the list. This emotional exhaustion eventually gives way to something even more insidious, self-resentment. When you say yes to everyone else's needs, but consistently neglect your own, you start feeling trapped in a cycle of dissatisfaction. You resent others for asking too much of you, but most of all, you resent yourself for always agreeing to things that make you unhappy. Take, for example, a situation where a colleague asks you to take on their responsibilities because they're overwhelmed. You agree, even though you already have a full plate. The first few times, you do it out of a sense of duty, but soon the resentment creeps in. You feel unappreciated and overworked, and each time you help, it feels like you're just digging yourself deeper into a hole. Eventually, the frustration builds to a point where you can't even bring yourself to be fully present in any of your tasks because you're so overwhelmed. This resentment isn't just aimed at others, it's internalized. You feel disconnected from your values, your needs, and your own desires. And the worst part, it's hard to escape this cycle because every time you say yes, you're only perpetuating the underlying problem, your unwillingness to prioritize your own well-being. This is where Stoic philosophy provides a critical perspective. Seneca, one of the greatest Stoic thinkers, warned, "It's not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. When we say yes to everything, we waste our most valuable resource, time. We deplete our energy, and we spread ourselves too thin, all in the name of pleasing others. But in doing so, we neglect the things that truly matter to us, our growth, our health, and our peace of mind." Stoicism teaches us that we must choose our commitments wisely. Every yes is a decision to spend your limited time on something. When we say yes to things that don't align with our values, we're essentially choosing to waste that time on something that drains us, rather than investing it in our own priorities. Time is a finite resource, and every moment spent in overcommitment is a moment lost from focusing on what truly serves us. The social consequences of constantly saying yes can be just as damaging. When we overextend ourselves, we make it harder to set healthy boundaries. Over time, people come to expect that we will always say yes, and our capacity to assert our own needs diminishes. This imbalance can breed resentment both from us and from those we try to please. Consider a relationship where one person constantly asks for favors and the other continues to agree, even though it leaves them drained. Eventually, the person being asked will start feeling frustrated and unappreciated, and on the other side, the person making the request may take it for granted that their needs will always be met without any effort on their part. This imbalance creates a cycle of dissatisfaction, leading to disconnection and resentment from both parties. Neglecting self-care in favor of other people's expectations can have long-term consequences. The more we neglect our own needs, the more we lose touch with who we are and what we want from our lives. Over time, we may find ourselves trapped in a pattern of people-pleasing and emotional exhaustion, where it becomes increasingly difficult to make space for the things that matter most. The cost of constantly saying yes is high, emotionally, physically, socially, and mentally. It leads to burnout, resentment, and a slow erosion of your self-respect. But by recognizing the price we pay for overcommitting, we can begin to shift our focus from external expectations to internal boundaries. In the next section, we'll explore how Stoic philosophy offers us the tools to break free from this cycle and take back control of our time, energy, and well-being. Saying no can feel almost impossible, right? Even when every part of you wants to decline, there's an overwhelming pressure to agree. What makes it so difficult to draw that line? The truth is, there are several deep-seated psychological barriers that prevent us from asserting ourselves, and they often run deeper than just being polite. Let's explore these challenges and see how Stoic philosophy offers a way to break free. At the root of many people's hesitancy to say no is a fear of conflict and rejection. We live in a society that often prizes harmony and consensus over individual needs, making it difficult to assert our boundaries without feeling like we're upsetting the balance. The idea of causing friction or discomfort by saying no, even when it's necessary, can feel like an insurmountable challenge. For example, imagine a colleague constantly asks you to cover their shifts even though your schedule is already packed. You feel guilty about saying no because you don't want to disappoint them or appear unhelpful. So you agree again, pushing your own needs aside to keep the peace. In this scenario, the fear of conflict outweighs your need for rest, leaving you drained and resentful. This fear stems from an emotional need to be liked and to avoid uncomfortable situations. Many of us equate saying no with being difficult or uncooperative, and the thought of facing that judgment is uncomfortable. As a result, we put others' needs above our own, leading to emotional burnout and dissatisfaction. The pressure to maintain harmony can be so strong that we sacrifice our well-being to avoid the discomfort of confrontation. Even when we consciously recognize the importance of saying no, an internal voice of self-doubt often steps in, reinforcing the belief that we shouldn't disappoint anyone or that we're doing something wrong by putting ourselves first. This voice whispers that saying no isn't just about rejecting a request, it's about rejecting the person or being selfish. This inner monologue often paints saying no as a form of moral failure, telling us that if we refuse to help, we're being unhelpful, difficult, or mean. These negative self-talk patterns can be paralyzing, as they make us feel that our worth is tied to how much we give and how well we please others. For instance, when a family member asks you to take on a task that you don't have the time or energy for, the inner voice might tell you, you'll be letting them down, or what kind of person are you if you can't help when they need it? These thoughts create a sense of guilt, which often leads to agreeing to things you don't want to do. You begin to believe that your needs are less important than someone else's. This self-doubt makes it feel like saying no is a moral failing. In the face of this internal conflict, Stoic philosophy offers a much-needed perspective. As Epictetus wisely said, we cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond. This means that while we cannot control the demands others place on us, we can control how we respond to those demands. When we approach situations through the lens of Stoic thinking, we realize that we don't need to internalize the guilt or pressure that others' requests bring. Our response is within our control, even when the requests themselves are not. For example, when asked to take on an additional task at work, we have the power to choose our response, to recognize that we are not required to say yes simply to avoid conflict or to maintain someone else's expectations. By making conscious decisions that align with our values and priorities, we can step out of the cycle of people pleasing and begin to honor our boundaries. This stoic reflection shifts the focus from external pressures to personal integrity. We must ask ourselves, what truly matters to me? When we respond from a place of self respect, we can set boundaries without feeling guilty or fearful of rejection. The emotional toll of guilt often keeps us stuck in the cycle of overcommitting. Guilt is a powerful motivator, and it often shows up when we try to assert our boundaries. The discomfort of disappointing someone or saying no can feel so heavy that in the moment it's tempting to just agree in order to relieve that discomfort. However, guilt is often irrational. It's not the truth of the situation, but rather an emotional reaction tied to our fear of rejection. We often feel guilty for prioritizing ourselves, even though that's what's healthiest for us in the long run. The discomfort of saying no can feel overwhelming, but it is temporary. On the other hand, the long-term effects of constantly saying yes, resentment, exhaustion, and loss of self-respect are far more damaging. In these moments, Stoic wisdom can help us reframe the situation. The Stoics emphasize living according to reason, not allowing our emotions to control us. When guilt arises, we can remind ourselves that we are not doing something wrong by prioritizing our well-being. Setting boundaries is an act of self-respect, not selfishness. Saying no can feel incredibly difficult due to the fear of conflict, self-doubt, and the overwhelming sense of guilt. However, by shifting our mindset through Stoic teachings, we can begin to understand that we have control over our responses, even in the face of external pressure. The discomfort of saying no will eventually fade, but the rewards, personal growth, peace, and self-respect are far greater than the temporary relief of constantly saying yes. In the next section, we'll explore how to use these insights to begin saying no with confidence and reclaim your time and energy. When it comes to saying no, many people feel torn between their desire to avoid conflict and the overwhelming pressure to please others. Fortunately, Stoicism offers us valuable tools to navigate this difficult terrain, providing a framework that allows us to assert our boundaries with integrity and clarity. Through the Stoic lens, we can learn to say no without guilt or fear, while maintaining respect for both ourselves and others. One of the core tenets of Stoic philosophy is the idea of living by virtue and integrity. This means that our actions should align with our core values rather than being driven by external pressures or the need to seek approval. Stoics believe that we cannot control the actions of others, only our reactions and decisions. This is where the concept of saying no with clarity comes in. When we align our actions with our own values, saying no becomes a clear decision, not an emotional response. Epictetus reminds us it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. When we view no as a tool to protect our own well-being and integrity, it becomes an empowering decision, not a rejection of others. By embracing this Stoic mindset, we can step away from the cycle of people-pleasing and begin making decisions that are authentic and in line with our highest principles. When we act in accordance with our values, saying no becomes a form of self-respect rather than a moral failing. One of the most common fears people have when considering saying no is that it will come across as rude or dismissive. This couldn't be further from the truth. A Stoic approach to saying no emphasizes that you don't need to be harsh or apologetic. In fact, saying no respectfully is an act of clarity and integrity, not disrespect. For example, imagine a friend asks you to help with a project, but you're already overwhelmed with your own commitments. A Stoic response might sound like this: "Thank you for thinking of me, but I'm unable to take on anything else right now. I hope you understand." Notice that there is no apology or over-explanation here, just a clear and respectful boundary. Marcus Aurelius offers wisdom on this by saying, "If it's not right, do not do it." This is a powerful reminder that we don't need to justify our decisions, especially when they are made in alignment with our values. Saying no is simply a recognition that our time and energy are finite, and that we are choosing to direct them toward things that matter most to us. A respectful no is about acknowledging that you have the right to prioritize your needs while also maintaining kindness and clarity with others. It's a practice of personal responsibility and self respect, not self sacrifice. The idea of setting boundaries can feel intimidating, especially when we fear that it might push others away. However, boundaries are not about shutting others out. They are about creating space for self care, well being, and authentic relationships. By saying no when necessary, we prevent ourselves from becoming overwhelmed, burned out, and resentful. Setting boundaries is a way to communicate clearly what is acceptable to you and what isn't. It's a form of respect for yourself and others. Seneca wisely said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Often we imagine that saying no will result in harsh consequences or rejection, but the reality is that most people respect clear boundaries when they are communicated with respect and confidence. If guilt arises when setting a boundary, it's important to acknowledge it without letting it dictate your actions. Guilt is often a reflection of fear. Fear of letting someone down, fear of being judged. Instead of letting guilt control you, use it as an opportunity to reflect on the importance of your own well-being. Remember, you are not responsible for others' feelings or reactions, but you are responsible for maintaining your own peace and integrity. The first step toward learning how to say no with confidence is awareness. Start noticing when you're saying yes out of fear or guilt rather than genuine willingness. Are you agreeing to something because you don't want to upset someone? Are you taking on responsibilities that don't align with your priorities simply to avoid feeling uncomfortable? Once you begin to identify these patterns, you can consciously choose to respond differently. Start small. Begin with one or two situations where you practice saying no respectfully without over-explaining or apologizing. Each time you do this, you will reinforce a new, healthier pattern of behavior. Over time, this will become easier and more natural. By taking these small steps, you reclaim your personal power. You begin to build the confidence to live in alignment with your values, and you foster a sense of self-respect that is not dependent on the approval of others. Saying no isn't just a rejection of a request. It's a reflection of self-respect and integrity. With Stoic wisdom, we learn that we are not required to overcommit or please everyone at the expense of our well-being. By setting clear boundaries, practicing respectful refusal, and aligning our actions with our core values, we can step into a life of authenticity and peace. The power of a respectful no can transform our relationships, our sense of self, and ultimately our freedom. Learning to say no with confidence isn't a skill that comes overnight, but just like any muscle, it can be developed over time with practice. For many, saying no feels like a daunting task, and the fear of disappointing others can feel overwhelming. However, with the right approach, you can build the muscle of saying no with grace, respect, and integrity. The key to becoming comfortable with saying no is to start small and work your way up. Begin with low-stakes situations where saying no doesn't feel as emotionally charged. For example, if a colleague asks you to join a meeting you don't need to attend, practice saying, "Thank you for asking, but I can't commit to that right now." At first, saying no may feel uncomfortable. You might experience a pang of guilt or worry that the other person will be upset. However, the more you practice, the easier it will become. Over time, you'll find that saying no doesn't equate to rejection. It's simply an acknowledgement of your own priorities and values. Remember, confidence isn't built in one go, it's a gradual process. You'll experience discomfort along the way, but that discomfort is a sign of growth. The more you exercise this muscle, the stronger it becomes, and eventually it becomes second nature. Here's a simple script you can use when practicing saying no. "Thank you for asking, but I can't commit at this time." This response is neutral, polite, and to the point. It acknowledges the request without over-explaining or apologizing. A critical part of learning to say no is developing self-awareness. Before agreeing to something, take a pause and reflect. Is this request aligned with my values? Do I have the time and energy to commit without feeling resentful? Will this decision bring me closer to my goals or take me off course? Pausing for a moment before responding gives you space to evaluate the request and ensure that your decision is thoughtful rather than impulsive. By taking this step, you'll learn to make decisions that support your well-being and peace of mind. One tool that can help you increase your self-awareness is journaling. Keep a journal to track situations where you felt pressured to say yes and reflect on why you agreed to it. This practice can help you identify patterns, such as saying yes because you fear rejection or because you're trying to avoid conflict. Over time, this will help you gain clarity about your triggers and begin to make decisions that are more aligned with your true desires. Another simple tool is to take a moment of quiet before responding to a request. This can be as simple as saying, "Let me think about it and get back to you." Taking a few minutes or even hours to process the request will allow you to make a decision with more intention and less emotional charge. When you say no with integrity, it does not create a wall between you and others. Instead, it promotes honesty, clarity, and mutual respect. By setting boundaries and being clear about what you can and cannot commit to, you build more genuine relationships with those around you. People who truly respect you will understand your need to prioritize your own well-being, and they will appreciate your honesty. Saying no with integrity is not about avoiding relationships or being selfish. Rather, it's about being true to yourself and honoring your time and energy. When you respect your own boundaries, you teach others to respect them too. And while it's natural to worry about how others will react, remember that those who value you will understand. True relationships are based on mutual respect, not on constantly meeting each other's demands. By saying no in a clear, respectful way, you help to cultivate more meaningful, balanced connections. You also free up space in your life to invest in things that truly matter: your personal growth, your health, and your relationships with those who genuinely value and support you. Building the muscle of saying no isn't an overnight process, but with practice, it becomes a powerful tool for maintaining your integrity and well-being. Start small, reflect on your decisions, and reinforce the importance of saying no in a way that fosters honesty and respect. Over time, you'll find that saying no becomes easier, and the sense of freedom and empowerment you gain will be well worth the effort. Saying no isn't just about refusing requests, it's a powerful act of affirming your self-worth, aligning with your values, and making space for what truly matters. Over time, this small but transformative action can radically change the way you approach your life and relationships, leading to greater confidence, clarity, and inner peace. Each time you say no, you are affirming your values and prioritizing your time, energy, and emotional health. This might seem like a small decision, but the cumulative effect of consistently choosing what aligns with your true self sends a powerful message to yourself. You matter. Your needs matter. For so long, many people have been conditioned to believe that saying yes to others is a sign of goodness or selflessness. However, constantly saying yes without considering your own needs can lead to burnout, resentment, and a slow erosion of your self-esteem. But when you say no, you're reminding yourself that your well-being is important, that you are worthy of respect, and that your time is a precious resource to be guarded. The more you practice this, the stronger your sense of self becomes. Each no you say builds your confidence, reinforcing the idea that you don't need to seek approval or validation from others to feel good about yourself. You start to realize that you don't have to sacrifice your peace to gain others' acceptance. And as this confidence grows, it creates a ripple effect. You begin to approach life from a place of empowerment rather than obligation. When you start saying no, it opens up space in your life to focus on what truly matters: your long-term goals, meaningful relationships, and personal well-being. We live in a world that often demands our attention, but not everything that demands our time and energy is worth it. By saying no to the trivial, the unnecessary, or the draining, you create more room for what aligns with your values and goals. Think about all the times you've agreed to commitments out of guilt or fear, only to find yourself stretched thin, unable to give your best to anything. You might have said yes to a social gathering when you really needed rest, or agreed to take on additional work when you were already overwhelmed. In those moments, your priorities shifted toward others' expectations and you neglected your own needs. By saying no, you are consciously choosing what to prioritize. This might mean saying no to short-term pleasures or distractions so that you can invest in your long-term vision, whether it's improving your health, advancing your career, deepening your relationships, or simply preserving your mental and emotional well-being. The more you say no to things that don't serve your higher purpose, the more space you create for the things that bring you joy, fulfillment, and growth. One of the most liberating aspects of saying no is the freedom it brings. Freedom from the pressures of pleasing others and from the constant need to overextend yourself. The Stoics believe that true freedom comes from living virtuously and in alignment with your values, not from meeting external expectations. In the words of Epictetus, freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control. When you live according to your core values, rather than trying to meet everyone else's demands, you experience a sense of inner peace that cannot be shaken by external pressures. Saying no is an act of virtue. It's about honoring your time, your energy, and your well-being as sacred. By making decisions that are rooted in your integrity, you live in alignment with your deeper goals and true self. This internal alignment brings a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. Saying no also sets the foundation for a life of authenticity. You stop feeling torn between your desires and others' expectations. Instead, you act based on what truly matters to you. You no longer feel the weight of constant compromise because you're choosing your own path, one that leads to freedom, growth, and peace. The transformative power of no lies in its ability to help you reclaim control over your time, energy, and life. By saying no, you affirm your worth, prioritize your needs, and align your actions with your core values. This process may feel uncomfortable at first, but over time it becomes a powerful tool for living a life of purpose and integrity. It's not about shutting others out. It's about making room for what truly aligns with your deepest desires and long-term goals. So the next time you feel pressure to say yes, remember that no is not an act of rejection. It's an act of self-respect, an affirmation that your time and energy are valuable, and a step toward living a life of true freedom and fulfillment. As you reflect on your next decision, ask yourself, will I say yes because it's the easy choice or because it truly aligns with my values? This simple question holds the key to reclaiming control over your life and living with intention. Every decision you make, no matter how small, shapes your future. By learning to say no, you take back the power to decide what deserves your time, energy, and focus. Remember the words of Marcus Aurelius, who said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When you align your actions with your values, you create the mental and emotional clarity needed to live authentically. This isn't just about rejecting external pressures. It's about choosing your own path and honoring your true self. Learning to say no is a tool for empowerment. It's not a rejection of others, but an affirmation of your worth and boundaries. By practicing it with integrity, you are not only protecting your time, but also cultivating self-respect and inner peace. This shift in mindset will bring you closer to living a life that is intentional, purposeful, and aligned with your deepest values. So take that first step. Start saying no with confidence, knowing that each choice strengthens your sense of self and moves you closer to the life you truly desire. Embrace the power of saying no and reclaim control over your life today.